and see how the maestro Botvinnik is using this chess pattern to get a complete winning position without any calculation. That's a function of this training. Once you deeply know these patterns, folks, your calculation process will become much more efficient. You will make these simple decisions efficiently, effectively, without spending so much time in irrelevant calculations. Hello dear chess lovers. Today I want to show you 8 crucial endgame patterns that you must know to convert your advantages. Across years, I've seen so many times people failing to notice these patterns and they can't convert a winning position. You know, chess is mostly a game of pattern recognition. It's crucial to learn these patterns and chunks so that you will know your dream states. Your whole calculation process will become efficient. You will have structure in your thinking. That's the final function of this video. Here we go. 8 crucial endgame patterns. Number 1, the outside passed pawn. Fischer in his position played the move b6. Why? Because his goal is to create the outside passed pawn with the move a5. Why is the outside passed pawn a winning force in a pawn endgame? It's a very simple reason. Because the moment they start rolling like this, the opponent's king needs to be decoyed and your king will win everything on the other side of the board. See how it works in a practical game. You just sacrifice the pawn to send the king to Siberia and your king is now collecting everything on the other side. Going back. Once you know the outside passed pawn pattern, here we go. Here we have the outside passed pawn for black. Then you will reverse engineer your way to achieve a winning position. That's the function of today's episode. I'm teaching you all the golden patterns like this. So when you see a position like this, you'll be noticing these chunks and patterns. It's already here, right? Strong players notice these things already from this position. Before Fischer goes b6, he knows the outside passed pawn is a winning advantage in a pawn endgame. Thus, he reverses his way backward to reach a dream state. Pattern number 2, connecting to the outside passed pawn. White to play. How would you win this position? Please stop the video and think for yourself first. Folks, pattern number 2, the candidate first principle. White has 2 pawns versus a single pawn on the queen side. The goal is to create a passed pawn. In fact, create an outside passed pawn to decoy the opponent's king, so your king will collect everything on the king side, right? Now we learned the outside passed pawn pattern. This should be easy to your mind. Our goal is to create a passed pawn. But how? Do you start with the move a3 or b3? What do you say? One move is winning, the other move is a blunder. And you're a great player if you found the move a3. Candidate first principle. The candidate pawn is the a pawn. Why? Because white has the a pawn, black has no a pawn in this structure. So that's your potentially candidate passer. And generally speaking, we should start rolling them first to be able to create a passed pawn. Black has no moves left. We are playing b3 next, of course, and we'll follow it up with the move a4. And voila, we just created an outside passed pawn that will decoy the opponent's king, and your king will win the game on the king side. Very simple mechanism, guys. I will show you very quickly, and white just wins the game very, very easily this way. Why are we pushing the candidate first? What was wrong with the move b3? And now comes pattern number 3. I will rotate the board for you. If they go b3 against you, what would you play? And you're a great player if you found the move b4. This pattern is called deep freeze. Your single pawn is deep freezing white's 2 pawns. You're stopping both pawns in a single pawn on b4, correct? Because if they ever go a4, you take en passant and black is winning the game. This means black is playing with an extra pawn with a clearly winning position. The king will invade. There's zugzwang patterns. I will roll the pawn. Zugzwang, zugzwang, zugzwang. I'm invading your camp and I will win the game very, very easily as black in this position. So to summarize, so far we learned the outside passed pawn, candidate first, and deep freeze. Once again, the outside passed pawn is created like this by pushing the candidate first. And once the outside passed pawn is created, the king needs to go to Siberia, and you're winning the game on the other side. Pattern number 4. Black plays the move f4. It's white's turn. What should white play in this position? There's only a single winning move for white. Please take your time and find the winning move. Unfortunately, the student played the move king g6 and he lost because of, you tell me, g4, and nobody's stopping the move f3, and black is creating an unstoppable pass pawn on the next turn. He thought, hey, my king can attack both of these pawns and I'm collecting one of them, and he's missing the breakthrough f3, and now there is no way for white to stop the pawn, right? If you take the pawn, then you lose. If you take this guy, then your king can no longer stop the pawn on f3. Going back, folks, you remember the most important question in chess? What would they do if I don't make a move right now? That's always the first question you must ask yourself whenever your opponent makes a move. They played f4. The question is, what is their next move? Of course, then you will see that they will go g4, follow it up with f3, and nobody is stopping that pawn. Interesting, this time black is creating a pass pawn from 2 versus 2 structure. In the previous example, there was 2 versus 1, remember? In this pawn structure, there are 2 pawns for both sides. So how come black can create a pass pawn in this pawn structure? And here comes the pattern, right? The structure is not symmetrical. It's an asymmetric pawn structure, which means if g4 is allowed, nobody is stopping the move f3 anymore. Thus, the only winning move is h3. Congratulations, you're stopping the opponent's threat, right? g4 was the real threat, and now these 2 pawns are in fact stopping black's 2 pawns, and your next move is simply to go king g6 and collect the pawn on g5 with a winning position. Look at that. Those pawns are completely stopped and you're winning after king g6. They cannot guard the pawn on g5, and once the pawn is gone, this guy will also drop on the next turn and white is winning the game easily. But that's an extremely important pawn endgame pattern too. The mechanisms of creating a pass pawn despite not having a majority on that flank, purely because of the asymmetrical distribution of these 2 pawns. Now, pattern number 5. We are moving to more complex examples, and again involving pawns. I will show you an extremely instructive moment in a game of Botvinnik. Black to play. Despite black being an exchange down, black has the advantage because of white's terrible pieces over here, right? Terrible pieces, and black also has the majority on the queen side. Good knight on c3 and so on. But how do you improve your position? How do you make sure that your rook will become activated in the near future, folks? Plan making. Please stop the video. How would you play this segment? One final prompt for you is the pawn on d4 is a weak pawn. Is there a way for black to use that weak pawn to activate our pieces while tying down the enemy pieces? Extremely important chess pattern is coming, and you're a great player if you found the sequence knight b5. Knight b5 is simply hitting that weakness on d4, thus forcing rook d1. Notice, white has no other way to guard the pawn on d4 right now. This is forcing them to really move that beautiful rook to a terrible spot like this. By purely attacking a weakness, you tie down the opponent's only active piece, and the next move is yours. What did Botvinnik play in this position? How did he take advantage of the rook leaving the only open file? And of course, rook a7. Once their pieces are going passive, our pieces are going active. Black is completely winning. The game ended in 2 moves from here. Rook a2 is coming. All the pieces are paralyzed. If rook e2, there are knight c3 forks. As you can see here, the entire thing is collapsing for white. So what did we learn from this example? Which chess pattern is this? That's a universal chess pattern, by the way, not only about the endgames. By simply attacking the weakness in a position, you can tie down the enemy pieces. And these 2 pieces are not the same. You have an attacking knight and they have a defensive rook. Many players, when they see a position like this, they say, okay, so what? Even if I attack that pawn, they will defend. That's a beautiful misconception in chess. That's what they are thinking. I don't see any improvement. Even if I attack that pawn, they will defend. What did I gain as a result? I'm now fixing those misconceptions. Look what you gained, my friend. That rook had to leave the file as a result, and your rook became an amazing piece on an open file. Can you see the function of hitting the weakness on d4 by this move? That's a beautiful chess patterns that you must internalize. For this, you must train your eye to see the weaknesses in the position. When you look at a position like this should attract your attention, this pawn on d4. See how white is lacking enough pieces or pawns to support that weakness on d4. This means their pieces have to tie down to defend that pawn. And as you know, rooks hate defending weak pawns in chess. I made a video about this. I will post a link on this as well, folks. Rooks, they love attacking those weaknesses. They hate guarding weak pawns like this. And see how the maestro Botvinnik is using this chess pattern to get a complete winning position without any calculation. That's a function of this training. Once you deeply know these patterns, folks, your calculation process will become much more efficient. You will make these simple decisions efficiently, effectively, without spending so much time in irrelevant calculations. Pattern number 6, very closely connected to what we've seen before, a nice connection to Botvinnik's game. It's a game between Lasker and Capablanca. I recently analyzed this game. A video is coming soon, guys. Hopefully. Capablanca, black to play, folks. How do you play with black in this position? Obviously, the first weakness is the pawn on d4, and you're attacking that weakness with your pieces, and you're tying down the white pieces. That's a very good thing. But what if I ask you to create one more weakness in the position? Now you're learning how to create weaknesses in chess using our pawns. And you're a great player if you found Capablanca's move a4. It's called the minority attack. By using your minority, single pawn versus those two pawns on the queen side, you're creating a weakness in the position, right? Because right now it's not easy at all to attack the pawn on b3. It's not even a weakness, it's guarded by the pawn on a2. But that pawn is very difficult to attack. But once you go a4, inevitably exchanges will take place on b3, and the b3 pawn will become a clear target for your pieces. Isn't it beautiful? A single pawn is attacking this pawn chain involving two pawns, hence the minority attack to create a weakness in the position. Kappa is creating the second front, so to speak. He's giving the second problem to Emmanuel Lasker. And after queen d2, Lasker's move, Capablanca exchanged the queens. He takes on b3. Already here, folks, two clear targets are created in the position. And look at the white pieces. They are terribly passive. And here comes my question. Can you guess Capablanca's next move in the position? This connects to what we've seen on the previous position, Botvinnik's example. I want you to find a move that completely paralyzes the white pieces. Okay, folks? To put it this way, do you go rook a6 or rook b6? Two choices. You're a great player if you found Kappa's move, rook b6. Beautiful positional chess. By hitting the target on b3, you're paralyzing the white pieces. Lasker had to make this ugly move, rook d3, to defend that pawn, but that rook is relegated to a humiliating task of defending two terrible weaknesses in the position, and Capablanca later played rook a6, activated the rook, and achieved a winning advantage beautifully. What was wrong with the move rook a6? If you go rook a6, then you're inviting rook b2. The rook belongs behind the passed pawn, and white is gaining some counterplay. That rook is becoming happy supporting the passed pawn. After rook b6, can't they just play rook b2 anyways? And you tell me, short calculation. Yes, folks, Kappa's idea was rook b4, and now this guy is a clear target, and there is no way for white to defend the pawn on d4. But after king f1, would you like to take on d4, or would you like to improve your king first? Do we have to take it right now? That pawn is not going anywhere, can always be taken on the next turn. Thus, king f8 is the best. After king e1, king e7 is the best. And only after king d2, we should take on d4, because after takes, this is coming with check on the king, and black is getting a completely winning position. Your king will stop the pawn on b7, and it's completely harmless pawn on b6, and black has a winning advantage. So can you see? The same idea was in work in his position. He first played rook b6 just to force the rook to b3. Now that rook can never go behind the passed pawn, completely paralyzed, and only then he activated the rook on a6. That's a positional finesse I'm trying to teach you in this video, folks. And even after rook a6, if white insists on the same plan, it's already too late, because rook a1 check followed by rook a2, hitting the knight and putting pressure on the pawn on f2. Once the pawn drops, there is one more pattern that is emerging, which is knight g3 followed by rook f1, rook h1 mates. White has no time to consolidate. That's a clear extra pawn for black. I can always bring my rook behind your passed pawn. Please look at the rook on d3. Terrible still, and black is completely winning in his position. Pattern number 7. Beautiful position. White to play. How would you win this position with white pieces? Your king is much more active than the black king. It's equal number of pawns in this pawn endgame, but there is no way forward for your king, right? How can you invade and eat all these pawns? Thus, you're relying on a beautiful chess pattern, universal pattern, the art of awakening pieces. h5 pawn move is undermining this f5 square for your king, and once these exchanges take place, this king is entering in the tray. You will collect all these pawns and win the game. After h5, they go g5, nothing changes. Your king is still collecting all these pawns. So by playing h5, you're undermining that pawn that was limiting your king, you see? That's a universal chess pattern, the art of awakening pieces. I made a course about this on Chessable. The same principle applies in pure pawn endgames as well. In other words, just like in last example, you're creating a weakness in the position, right? Again, by using your pawns, you're creating a weak square on f5, which your king will use on the next turn, right? That's the beautiful thing about weak squares. Multiple of our pieces can use it. Sometimes the knights can use it, bishops, queens. In the endgame, our king can also use such weak squares. But if the opponent doesn't give you weak squares, you must find a way to create weak squares, and hence this pattern I'm teaching you right now. Many players in this position would go g5. g5 is not technical at all as h5. There's a gigantic difference between these two moves, because by going g5, you're inviting f takes g5, f takes g5, and h5, and suddenly black is having a protected passed pawn on h5. Now this becomes a race. Now you must calculate like an engine to maybe find a winning continuation. Look at this. How can you make sure that this is winning for you? You're inviting all these ideas for black. You must find this entire sequence for white. This is the only branch that is winning for white, and it involves both sides queening at the same time. Come on, guys. You messed this up. This is far from technical win in my book, right? What's going on here? You're inviting queen e4, checks king f6, and yes, with best play, white is winning, but in a practical game, any result is possible from these positions. So you see the difference between g5 and h5. Once you internalize this lesson of undermining squares for our pieces, this should become much more faster in your brain to come up with, right? That's a beautiful pattern to remember. The way to understand this, folks, is to look at the pawn on g6. No black pawn can support that pawn on g6, and your pawn can attack that guy on h5. Your pawn is supported by this guy, so if they take, you can replace the pawn. What has changed is the king's access to this beautiful f5 square. And finally, pattern number 8. Fischer game. Fischer, Reshevsky. White to play. Please stop the video. How do you play this endgame with the white pieces, folks? It's your turn. It's equal material, same color bishops. What's going on here? Folks, the pattern number 8 is freezing the opponent's weakness. By going g5, Fischer is freezing the h7 pawn as a clear target on a semi-open file. Isn't it beautiful? If you don't play g5, if you make, let's say, a more natural move, king e2, you tell me, what will black do to you? Bam! You're inviting h5, and they are stopping your idea of freezing the weakness on h7. In fact, they are even creating a passed pawn on their own. This is becoming a strength for black. They will play rook g8 to activate their rook. Black is completely equal in this position. Notice that, folks. A single slip and everything is changing. So in this particular position, you should see h5 as a positional idea for black. And you see this multi-purpose move, g5, freezes the h7 pawn as a clear target, but also don't give them a chance to create a passed pawn. Look at this. We discussed this. Now I have an attacking rook and you have a defensive rook. Look at the difference between this rook on h1 and the rook on h8, folks. See how it connects to our episode today? See how we are consolidating our lessons by this final beautiful example? Amazingly beautiful game. I can show you also how the game went. Fischer has a clear advantage here because again, positional assessment please. Black cannot generate a passed pawn. Black has a bad bishop. Also this rook is terrible. White has so many different ways to improve their position, and Fischer in fact played very naturally here. He plays b4, very nice move. Well, at some point he can go b5 for example to force a trade to fix the pawn structure, maybe open up one more file for his pieces. That's a very useful move. Black played b5 just to stop b5 for white, but you see, can you tell me the drawback of this move, folks? There's a clear drawback to this pawn move. Yes, now a6 pawn is becoming a target and Fischer starts eyeing the freshly created weakness on a6. See how naturally Fischer is playing this game, folks. Then he plays rook h3. Couple of ideas. Sometimes rook f3, sometimes rook h1. You see? Another very flexible move. He tries to simply put pressure on those weaknesses in the position, folks. That's a beautiful endgame exercise. Bishop f8, rook h1. Again, by attacking that target. Remember the Botvinnik game. By simply attacking that target on h7, I'm tying down your pieces. Many players would say, so what? I'm attacking that pawn, so what? He will defend. I don't see any clear progress for myself. See how a master is playing like this? His claim is very simple. Now these rooks are completely paralyzed. They have no function whatsoever, and I'm taking the initiative. I am controlling this game. I can move my rooks anytime, anywhere I want, and I will control the game this way. You have to react to my ideas. I'm completely taking you and keeping you paralyzed in guarding that terrible weakness on h7, which I froze 10 moves ago. This position is almost like a Zugzwang, folks. Fischer plays the move rook h4. That's an amazing move. He just makes a waiting move. Look at this. This rook on h8 cannot move. This bishop cannot move because if you move bishop g7, I'm taking on h7. If bishop e7, I take on h7. Look at this. The bishop has no moves. The rook has no moves. The king cannot go back because of this. And this rook, if you go to anywhere on the 7th rank, then you're inviting rook a1. Look at this. Now you cannot even guard your pawn on a6. Isn't it incredible? Isn't that like a beautiful Zugzwang position? By simply attacking that pawn, you literally force a Zugzwang position. Fischer enjoys the moment by the move rook h4. He asked Reshevsky, what's your next move? The only move that is left for black is the try d5. It's a try d5, but here of course he goes back to a1. He's again paralyzing that rook on the defensive post like this, and only then he takes on d5. Well, look at this. One more check is coming. Now the problem is this. This rook can go to the 8th rank, folks, right? He found a way to improve his position. Now there are multiple problems facing black, not to mention bishop c5 ideas. This bishop is pinned. If you go to g7, I take your rook followed by rook h7. See how he's improving his position step by step. That's an amazing game, folks. White is completely winning, by the way. King f5, rook a8. One more target again, completely paralyzing the black pieces, attacking one more weakness, and enjoying the position because black is no threat. I'm not facing any threats. You have no moves left, says Fischer. Rook e6, the worst rook ever. Just keep on waiting. And here comes the final phase. Simple move rook h3. Another little improvement. This rook can go to f3 and collect the bishop on f8. The final nail in the coffin. Please observe this position, folks. Black has no moves left, and now they have to cash in and give this pawn to us. Bishop g7, well, after takes, this pawn is dropping. So Reshevsky was forced to give up a pawn. The bishop still sucks. This rook is paralyzed in guarding the tall pawn on h8, and Fischer checks the king. Reshevsky will resign very, very soon, folks. Here, if Fischer found the move king f1, the game is completely over. Bishop f2 followed by rook h7 mate. The game is over. Fischer did not find this mating net. He played king d3, and yet he's completely winning this position, folks. I will just show you exactly how the game went. Black is completely lost, but we'll see until the very end how Fischer converts this advantage. Well, I mean, 2 extra pawns, no counterplay, improving the king as well, pushing the passed pawn, comes a little calculation moment, takes. Of course, I defend like this. Now my pawn is rolling after rook f2. You tell me Fischer's next move. White to play and win. There are so many winning moves. Even this is winning, but the most technical, rooks belong behind the passed pawns, and Reshevsky resigned because this guy is rolling. Black has no way to stop the pawn. Wasn't that like a lovely little game that combined everything we saw in this episode? I hope you loved this episode, folks. 8 crucial patterns, all involving pawns, if you pay attention. Either pawn play to create weakness, activate our pieces, or hitting a pawn, thus tying down the enemy pieces, pawn breakthroughs, candidate first ideas, and stopping the opponent from creating a passed pawn. I gave you beautiful, important, recurrent endgame chunks and patterns in this video to make your calculation process much more efficient. You can revisit this video from time to time to fresh up your memories about those patterns because they are so crucial to know by heart. If you know them by heart, it will pop up to your brain when you're playing your games to make the calculation process much more efficient. So you will stop looking at the random moves, random calculations. There will be structure to your thinking, basically. That's the function of such pattern and chunk training. And please let me know what you think about this video. Give me a like and subscribe if you like it so I can keep on producing content that actually helps you get better in this beautiful game. Bye-bye.